Good afternoon. My name is Pam McElvane. I'm the CEO of Diversity MBA Media. Welcome to the Inclusive Voice podcast. This is a new podcast that we're launching as an extension of the radio show my weekly radio show that I host. This is the Inclusive Voice on WCPT 820 AM, Chicago Progressive Talk. And it airs Saturday morning at 7 a.m. live. So looking forward to having a deeper conversation with the Inclusive Voice podcast. So I wanted to share with you, what is this about? What was my intention for wanting to continue the conversation so many diverse voices and perspectives can be heard? We know the radio show is a great way for us to be able to hear live in real time what's going on with people and what stories they have to share, as well as barriers and obstacles and experience they have. Even more importantly, to be able to showcase differences about the work people are doing around the globe. That's what's really exciting for me. And then even more so than that, we wanted to be able to have deeper conversations. And so the Inclusive Voice, which will air weekly, in having various guests, I will also bring op-ed and diversity news at least a couple times a month. So you have an opportunity to be updated. So why am I qualified to do that? Well, a couple of things I wanted to share is one, we are benchmarking and research organization, one of the pillars that we have. And within this, we collect over 35,000 insights for the past 18 years, understanding how diversity, equity, inclusion intersect with talent management. So we know what organizations, large employers, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, or the largest organizations in the nation are doing around employing their workforce, creating culturally inclusive environments, or struggling with some of the external impacts that's happening. We measure on an annual basis on what these organizations are doing for the whole purpose of being able to share with organizations and executives and leaders what's going on. And in addition to that, I'm also a board certified master coach where I coach a number of executive leaders. I think there's between 30 and 40 that I think about now. And then I just talk to them all the time. So I'm able to engage and understand and absorb real-time insights on what's going on with the leaders. And being able to share some of those perspectives, I think, are very, very important. So what else do I do that's going on? I am a publisher, both of publications. We do bi-monthly publications, digital publications, as well as print. We are also able to do, we provide blogs. We support the exposure of many published authors as well in best-selling New York Times or Amazon best-selling, or just authors that self-publish as well. Our whole intent is to be able to get the word out in as many mediums as we can. That's what our commitment is. And so my commitment here is really to be able to share with you maybe insights and information that you're not getting from other folks. So you can go online to diversitymba.com and share any of the insights you want with us, or please email me at pam@diversitymba.com, pam@diversitymba.magazine. And I'm also available at pamela.a.mcelvane.com. There, I have also published my first book, Skinny on Diversity Recruiting, and look for in May my second book, The Skinny on Workplace Inclusion and Retention. These are global strategies captured from the insights that we do every week. So I'm a constant, continual learner, always trying to understand and be aware of what's going on. So what I wanted to be able to share with you today in my the first opening of my op-ed on diversity news and the inclusive voice is that, perhaps take a deeper dive and help you understand a little bit what organizations are doing. I can say that last month we had a great opportunity, or I had a great opportunity being able to speak with the Wall Street well, talking to the Wall Street Journal now, but being able to speak to New York Times and be published by the Washington Post, where these organizations, major media organizations, are talking about what's happening with the disruption of diversity, equity, inclusion, and talking about how diverse slates, they want to understand better how diverse slates are leveraged within the workplace and how organizations are being able to be fair and equitable and provide access. So, first of all, I would like to talk about and reflect on some of the diversity issues that's been going on, and hence our subheader and talking about diversity news. As we look into the future, let me just step back and talk about AI. And I know oftentimes people are saying, oh my goodness, what are we doing with AI, particularly in the workplace, as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion? I can say this to you, what organizations, how they are leveraging artificial intelligence in terms of recruiting. They're using AI. Right now, it's about of our 489 companies, it's about 60% of them are using some part of AI to help them with sourcing, to expand their outreach, while they know and they're very aware that there are potential issues that can come, as with any other technology tool, with potential built-in biases. So they really are leveraging AI as a way to further their reach with other organizations, to help them source talent, actually not just North America, but globally, in a way that typically doesn't allow. But on the flip side, AI does help you access information quicker. You just have to be astute enough to know, what's true and what isn't. So not to leverage it and use it in such a way that it's not helpful, but to leverage it and use it in a way that will inform you to ask more questions, right? To be able to further clarify and think about what you're doing. Our younger generation, they're using AI, and we want them to be able to use it as a tool. And keep in mind, we want them to only use it as a tool and not to be able to have it think for them. And we have to be very careful for that. With all the intellectual property issues that are now beginning to exist and continue to creep up around AI, it's important that you know and be very aware of whatever you seek and information you put to source more insights on, you are fueling AI. It just, it's kind of interesting because I put it out there and I wanted to see, okay, what is AI going to tell me about best practices in diversity recruiting? Well, of course, my book is published and, I've done many papers and information, and voila, what did I see? I saw my best practices show up in AI. Well, the good news is at least they're pulling up the right information and I can validate that it's accurate. But you want to make sure that you take the next step in understanding how you want to use AI. And so with that, I just wanted to, share, because many sources are talking about how AI is going to take over all these different jobs in the workforce. I just want to say, we just want to be careful to make sure that you understand how to use it as a tool and not necessarily to replace you. We already know how it's used in customer service. We get frustrated with not being able to get a person, and what organizations are doing to continue to drive costs down. But I just wanted to help remind you to know that within the workplace, that organizations are leveraging AI to help them benefit and reach more. The other thing that came up earlier this year when we were talking about the intellectual property in terms of how AI or animation was stepping up and taking over what was going on in Hollywood. Well, I will just say this to you. The one thing that I do know, everyone are not A-listers in Hollywood, and we're not going to begin to talk about the inequities and biases that exist there. But for the most part, most of the folks in Hollywood that are working these jobs, and they are individuals that truly are still fighting for their piece of the pie, if you will. They're working very hard, just like we do every day in our normalized process. these are most of the individuals there are having to, pay out extraordinary costs for healthcare and other kinds of things. There's nothing about it that's fair. So when companies, and they can, when production companies are using animation and they're saying, hey, we instead of using real talent, we want to use the talent that animation brings us so we can bring down salaries. Well, for your A-list folks, okay, but for the majority of people, that's very, very difficult. That's taking them out of the limelight, not allowing them to continue to build on their craft and become better contributors. So we really have to, think about, what is going on with this? How long are we going to allow this? And what are we going to do when we say AI can actually step in and take over, right? Take over who we are, take over the human equity part of it. It really can't, but nonetheless, there are organizations that are leveraging it. I'll tell you if you want to do some research, New York Times and Washington Post came out on a really good series and talking about how chat GPT is being leveraged and what you need to do for some of the best practices and sources. And I'm just, I'm just sharing with you that we know within organizations in the workplace, once again, AI is used in a way to help facilitate larger connections, as well as internal within the organizations, as well as internal workforces within the organization. They're trying to do that. So that's all I really want to share with you and talk about what's happening on the AI front. The next issue that I really want to bring forward, and then my diversity news and share an opinion on is the imbalance of power. And so, what does that mean when we talk about the imbalance of power? Concept or something that's existed for a long time, right? Something that's not new to us right now. The imbalance of power is, has gone on. If you want to talk about, slavery and many other oppressed cultures that have existed around the world, we can talk about the imbalance of power as it relates to people of color, as it relates to politics, and as it relates to justice. Well, my concern of the imbalance of power is really what I want to talk about today, is as it relates to justice. What's really frustrating for me is that when you think about our Supreme Court, and where you are seeing it dismantle actually work that's been done for decades by leaders that are no longer here, but had people that preceded them and continued to fight for what was justice and for the rights of all. We know when you think about civil rights, period, and the civil rights movement, you have many groups that benefited, not just for African American, although it was led on the Black experience, but white women were the largest group to benefit from civil rights. And then, of course, you had LGBTQIA plus non-binary community that benefited. And actually, the group that benefited the least were the largest workforce on the planet, and that's persons with disabilities. And that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But the issue here that we're talking about is when we actually be able to have movements that make a difference and drive change in the fabric of our culture, and then to have a system that we know, depending based on this economic status, that the imbalance of power existed, because if you could afford to have good representation within the legal system, you were going to, for the most part, have a fair and equitable opportunity of being heard. But if you couldn't, you were going to be dealt with the inequities of institutional and structural racism. So so I go back and say, but today, from all of the changes and the investments that's happened over time, we know that, or we hope that as it manifested from everything from just now from one structural effort to the next, that we were going to see change that sustained. That's what it was all about. When you talk about and go back to the plan of progress with Johnson and the whole intention of wanting to provide equity in the workplace for people of color and women, and then affirmative action. I mean, really, affirmative action was never, ever about quotas. It was about taking the most qualified talent and and allowing a competitive slate that white males had to compete for positions that no longer were just given to them based on inherent rights and privilege. So instead, you had to have affirmative action, just allow for access and exposure, nothing more than that. And then again, talking about the imbalance of power at the highest courts, where they dismantle, deconstruct, if you will, what was there to help us move generations. In corporate America, where I was able to work, I mean, affirmative action clearly, I believe, supported my rise. However, trust, or as they say, trust and believe clearly had to be qualified for any of those positions, and in most cases, overqualified. And then when you continue to talk about, and look at the imbalance of power of what the highest courts could do, taking away women's basic rights, you have to think about when men are making decisions about women that impacts their body and their beliefs and what's going on. Yes, life is something that's a blessing, but some others it may not be. Particularly, what could happen. Whether I believe in abortion or not, I just don't believe in taking away the fundamental rights of a person to choose. I mean, reminds me of a common day slavery, if you will. And so I'm not sure, where the Constitution says you can do this, but here our Supreme Court, not only being very conservative, no longer just making conservative choices, it's making choices for a particular party. And whoever thought in our lifetime that the imbalance of power would stem from the highest courts of the land? And so when you look at, what CEOs within organizations are faced with, they're faced with the imbalance of power every day. But what most importantly for them, they're choosing to do what's right for their workforce, what's right for the community in which they serve. They're not making decisions arbitrarily based on what politically will allow them to be seen or heard differently. That's not what's happening with our leadership within the workplace, within corporate America, regardless if the CEO are white men or women or people of color. The reality is those leaders are trying to make the best decisions, most of them are, for their workforce. And so to be in a position today where we're forced with and having to deal with a legal system that is being able to truly make changes and truly to be able to impact culture based on their view, their opinion is no longer even driven by law, has put us in a position as people to have to come together around equality and human equity. It no longer should be about one person not respecting another person. It really should fundamentally be about all of us ensuring that we have basic and fundamental rights as human equity, as human people, as mankind. So I know this is, this op-ed here, and I am really feel very strong and passionate about what's happening with the imbalance of power and the raw deal, if you will, that diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a transformation within a culture, right? It's the practices that support and drive to ensure everyone is treated fairly and respected the same. So I would just ask you to, think about what you can do. What could your call to action be with leveling the things that you can control? Well, we definitely have to get out and vote. That's really where our voices are heard. We know right now we can't control what happens in the Supreme Court with them making decisions that has taken us back more than 5 decades. Whoever thought that would happen? We don't want that to be a place for our children because we know they will make decisions to move forward and then we will be able to move beyond this. But in the meantime, we should basically be able to leverage everything in our power and unite and come together so that we can move towards more balance to those things that we can control and then just minimize those things that we can't. So that's my chat for today with you guys. My name Pam McElvane, the Inclusive Voice. We will be coming on with more guests in the future to be able to talk about and do deeper dive in discussions. I wanted to just open up and share with you. Join us in the conversation.